here on day 72, we were, up until moments ago, going to talk about how do you know if the startup idea that you have is the one you want to work on. And the moment feels like it calls for a little bigger reflection than that. So we're going to riff.
If anyone's caught the news in the last 10 minutes, we are doing this episode in honor of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a champion of women's rights and gender equality, among many other things. And so we figured we should talk about something a little bit more timely. And so, I don't know, Roy, how do you think about your life's work?
So when I was a freshman in college, the dean of the School of Arts and Sciences, of like the college and graduate school, not the professional schools, gave this speech about the arrow and the spiral. How some people are like the arrow. They just know what they want and they go do it. And other people have this meandering, spiraling path, and that both are okay. Like it was meant to make the spiralers feel better at the beginning of college, being surrounded by a bunch of arrows. And I have always been a spiral. You know, I've worked in government and nonprofits and big media and started a company. And now I know I make my home in this startup thing. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I just want to say, always struck me as an arrow, like a person who from early on knew the kind of justice she wanted to bring into the world, worked hard at it, was at the top of her field and achieved. And I've always been jealous of the arrows. And the thing I would just say is only the spirals ask themselves this question, because the arrows didn't know. Or at least that's how I imagine it for others, I think. So I will speak as a spiral to spirals. And this is something I've written about a little bit in the context of how do you know how to take risks? Because I think the essence of being a good spiral is trying stuff so that you see, because you can't figure it out by sitting there and thinking and convincing yourself, yes, I shall be a climate change activist or a startup founder. I think it involves trying on guesses for size and then being savvy about knowing how to assess those guesses. And sometimes those guesses are about trying a side project, as we've talked about many times. Sometimes it's spending a couple of years in a career, which I've certainly done in a few of these careers. Sometimes it's volunteer opportunities, but depending on your guess, there's a way to try it on. And now, and only as of the last 10 years or so, I'm like, yes, my home is helping startups grow. And whether that means starting something or being an investor. And I only discovered it, and I was really reluctant. Like, I was like, this internet thing. Like, I graduated from college in the era where a lot of people were like internet snake oil salesmen, like a lot of crypto folks are today. That was the vibe. And so only by trying did I realize how wrong I was, that I didn't want to do that. So I don't know, Min, I feel like you've also tried some different things and had some thinkings and wanderings and had your thoughts evolve. What are your thoughts on this?
I don't know. I mean, if you had asked me when I was like upon graduating school, university, right? Like, and you told me, you know, a couple of years later, I'd be living across the country, working with you and with startups. I didn't even know what venture was like 5 years ago. And so I actually think about it a little bit differently, like meaning I think I personally make my choices based on who do I think are people that I want to be around who make me better, right? And that is another way to think about like how you want your life's work to go, because you're leading and following great people that you respect and admire.
Yeah. So what I hear in that is something that is, I think, very can be generalized, which is if I talked about how do you explore the possibilities, you talked about what do you solve for in the meanwhile? And I've always solved for learning. And my way of solving for learning has been chasing extraordinary people, but just the joy of working with extraordinary people is another thing to solve for. Some people solve for options or for money so that they can be free. And all those things can be valid choices, but in the objective function of your career, while you're exploring, having something to solve for is essential. And I think you gave an example of a great one. And I think that's all the wisdom I have before I go and put my head between my knees and figure out what to do about this world.
Wow. Well, Happy New Year for you and anyone else celebrating.
Thank you. May this be the last bad thing of 57, 80.
Oh, no, don't say that.
Well, we're a few hours left, so I think it's okay. 80's already over on the East Coast, I think, so it should be
okay. Well, we will be back on Monday for more. This is not advice. Depending on what's going on in the world, we might explore some startup questions or other work questions. And so
We have
share
a
with
very
us what you
exciting
want to
guest
know.
coming up next week, a founder of a very exciting company who we've been fortunate to back, who has some great managerial thoughts. So stay tuned.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Bye.